Welcome everyone to CASA of Los Angeles virtual early childhood convening, advocating for young children and child welfare. This is day 2 of our convening, and we're going to be focusing on collaboration with parents of young children and child welfare. We're just allowing a couple more minutes for folks to log into the webinar and get settled. As you're waiting and as you're arriving, please put your name in the chat box if you'd like, as well as your organization, and say hi to the other participants. Also, remember to check the chat box through the course of the convening for URLs to links to resources we are sharing, as well as the virtual program for today for the convening itself. We will start with our first speaker around 12:05. Thank you. Oh. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everyone, to day 2 of CASA of Los Angeles virtual early childhood convening, advocating for young children in the child welfare. My name is Lori Halderman, and I'm the program manager for early childhood at CASA of Los Angeles. I will again be your moderator. To start us off today, I would like to introduce Wendy Julian, Chief Executive Officer for CASA of Los Angeles. Wendy will be sharing some opening remarks with you. Wendy?
Thank you so much, Lori, for all of your work that's gone into this, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. Lori has put in a lot of work for this convening, but most particularly into our early childhood program at CASA of Los Angeles in general. And I'm so thankful to her work, the work of Megan Maddock, our Chief Program Officer, as well as our whole team and their dedication and focus to the littlest of the children that we serve. And also, of course, we couldn't do this work without our incredible supporters. And in particular, we have 2 foundations, the Atlas and Deutsch Foundations, who have supported our early childhood work and continue to support and push us to do this work and do it better. So it's exciting to be able to be together and talk about how we can improve the child welfare system, starting with the youngest kids in it. As many of you know, my career in youth development before coming to CASA was mostly focused on older youth, on teens and adults. And even as a CASA volunteer, I have served both non-minor dependents. But about a decade ago, I started learning about work like ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and brain development. And it helped me deeply with my work with older children because of the impacts that their early childhood experiences had had on them. But it was also deeply personal to me. It helped me because around that same time, my family we had dived headfirst into the world of foster care. We went through the classes, we were licensed as foster parents, and we opened our home to a 6-year-old. She was 1 week shy of her 6th birthday when she moved in with me. Her name is Angela, and she had been in foster care for 4 years in 10 different placements during that time. To say that she had experienced trauma before and after entering foster care is really quite an understatement. And as a foster parent and eventually as an adoptive parent, I needed to learn a lot of things about what I could do to be an appropriate caregiver for her. So at the same time, I was going through these trainings, and there was one thing that kept happening in the trainings, and I'm going to show it to you right now. I kept saying this slide. And, Dr. Nicholas showed a similar slide in her beautiful presentation last year. So this slide is a slide of 2 brains, one that is a normal 3-year-old child's brain and another 3-year-old child's brain who had experienced extreme neglect. And I was learning about this in an academic sense. And then also, of course, feeling the extraordinary stress of being a caregiver who understood that my 3-year-old, my then 6-year-old as a 3-year-old had experienced this kind of extreme neglect. I had seen it in the files. And so I learned and paid very close attention to what I was learning about early childhood experiences to try to do the best that I could for her. But what I thought was extraordinarily terrible is that at this time, most of these presentations ended with this. What it was to say, we have to prevent trauma, we have to prevent neglect, but not what do we do once the neglect or the trauma has already happened. So that became even more poignant for me when in kindergarten, I think it was 1st grade, Angela had a homework assignment that she had to do where she had to bring in a baby picture. I had no baby pictures, and I contacted her social worker to ask for a picture from a file. And the only picture that they sent me is this one. So this is the picture of my daughter being removed. Like I said, she had been in 10 placements. This was actually taken on the date of her removal. I won't go into how I feel about the fact that they forced her to take a picture in this situation. But when I look at this picture, I can't help but think about what that brain looked like and how it resembles what the brain looked like in that scan. So I paid a lot of attention to what we could do to make this better. And my really thought about it was to think what Angela would have needed at that time. So I have learned a lot about that since I came to CASA, and I'm very thankful to Lori and other folks who have done that, is that there is actually a great improvement in the science and teaching around trauma that shows that there is a way to heal this brain. There's a way to take that 3-year-old and make significant strides to undo the harm caused by trauma. And that isn't medication or surgery. It is actually positive, consistent, therapeutic adult relationships. It's love. Dr. Nicholas said over and over, it's human love, right? It's caring, it's permanency. So Angela is now a freshman in college. She has taken great advantage of the care of social workers, therapists, psychiatrists over the years and done incredible work herself. She has just this year reconnected with her birth mother and siblings and has a permanent and strong relationship, of course, in her permanent and adopted family, my family. She is playing with a mariachi and her pictures are really a lot happier now. I figured I wouldn't leave you on the crying picture of her and show you a cute selfie that we took. See if it'll pull up here. On Mother's Day last year, that's me and my older daughter and Angela in the middle. What I learned and why I feel like my calling is to be at CASA is that we have over 1,000 volunteers who are quite literally healing the brains of the children who they're advocating for in foster care in Los Angeles. We also get to work with incredible partners, attorneys, judges, social workers, therapists, and especially the parents and caregivers of these children who are working towards the same goal, to both prevent the trauma, but also help children heal from the trauma that they've already experienced. So I feel very optimistic that working in partnership, we can get to that place where children are able to reunite quickly with their parents wherever and whenever possible, and where relative caregivers and non-relative caregivers are supported with everything they need. But most importantly, that children are in caring, loving families. So that's why I'm here, because Angela didn't have a CASA while she was needing one during those difficult transitions. In fact, we have identified about 12,000 children in the Los Angeles County Child Welfare System who need a CASA right now. These caring adults make a significant difference in the life of children and foster care of their parents and their caregivers, the CASAs, all the team. So I'm so thankful that you all are here to talk about this today, to think and to listen and to care. I'm so thankful to our panelists who will talk today about what we can do as CASA volunteers, as an organization, to better support parents and caregivers, to be in more successful collaboration and partnership with you all. I'm so thankful to be able to have these conversations. I wish we were in the same room together, but this is certainly a happy alternative. And I'm grateful and looking forward to everything I can learn today in this presentation. So thank you all, and thank you, Lori.
Okay. Everybody, I think you can hear me, but I can't actually find, let's see if I can find my picture. And yes, it's being recorded. I see a question coming on here. There we go. Okay, thank you for understanding. That was a 2020 oopsie on my part to make myself disappear. Thank you, Wendy, for your wonderful remarks. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate Dr. Nicholas's information last week that laid the foundation for the importance of healthy relationships between consistent and caring adults and young children who have experienced trauma and adverse childhood experiences. Today, we are going to focus our attention on one side of that relational equation, the parents of young children in child welfare. In order to help our young children, we, meaning those in the system, have to support the parents in building up their capacities so that the parents have healthy relationships with their young children, so then their young children can build their capacities and be resilient. We have a wonderful panel of speakers today to further delve into this topic of collaboration with parents. Just a couple logistical reminders. We have set aside time at the end of the convening for question and answers later on. Like last week, please post your questions for the panelists using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom webinar screen. Also remember to check the chat box periodically for URLs to resources that we will be posting. And finally, yes, we will be recording the session and emailing it to you next week. Now I would like to launch a poll for you, and if you could please answer the poll, and then we're going to review those results. We're about 55% done with the poll, so I'll give about 20, 25 more seconds for everybody to answer. We have about 20% left to answer. And the results are anonymous if that is of concern to you. Okay. I'll give 10 more seconds for the remaining 10% if you would like to answer. Okay. I'm going to be closing the poll now, and I'd like to share the results. So the first question, there is no bias in the dependency court system against parents. 9% said that was true, but resounding 91% indicated that there is bias in the dependency court against parents. For question number 2, that question is pertaining to Los Angeles County since we're based here. What percentage of African-American Black children were served by DCFS in August 2020? The answer is 23.9%, which was the 24%. But our answers are all over the place. So there does seem to be a high level of disproportionality and disparity of African-American children served by Los Angeles's Department of Children and Family Services. And then in the last question, it was kind of a trick question. What programs below provide support for parents involved in the child welfare system? In fact, all of the above provide support for parents. We're going to actually hear from somebody in Parents in Partnership. We're going to hear from a volunteer cultural broker. We're going to hear from a staff member at Prototypes. So it was kind of a trick question on my part, but all of those programs do serve our parents here in Los Angeles County. So thank you everyone for participating in the poll. Now I would like to introduce our panelists for today's session. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dennis Smeal. Mr. Smeal is a graduate of Claremont McKenna College and the USC Gould School of Law. Since 1997, Mr. Smeal has practiced dependency law, representing parents who have had their children taken away due to allegations of abuse or neglect or fear of the same. Beginning 2006, he has worked at Los Angeles Dependency Lawyers, Inc., or as we call it, LADL, the largest parents representation firm in the country with 194 lawyers serving over 23,000 parents. And it's the biggest in the country. He has served as staff attorney, senior attorney, supervising attorney, and law firm director. And then on January 2nd, 2020, he agreed and started as the executive director of LADL. He has developed an intensive 6-week one-on-one training for new attorneys and has regularly conducts trainings on such diverse topics as detention hearing protocols, reunifying parents with mental health issues, limiting guardian ad litem appointments, and storytelling at trial. He conducts Know Your Rights and child welfare workshops for numerous nonprofits, colleges, and law schools. And for the last 4 years, he has spearheaded LADL's legislative efforts. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Richard Cohen, an educational psychologist. Dr. Cohen has spent over 40 years working with young children and their families. Dennis, did you disappear? Please stay. Since 2001, his work has mostly been focused on young children in or at risk of being in the child welfare system. Recently, he has been focusing efforts on fatherhood engagement. That's my addition. This includes 7 years running a foster family agency, 7 years directing a federally funded early childhood mental health project, and 5 years as a co-chair of DCFS's Young Children in Care Committee. Richard is a Los Angeles native and father and holds a PhD in educational psychology from UCLA. Next, I would like to introduce Michelle Rosamond, Managing Director for Prototypes. Ms. Rosamond obtained her BA degree in psychology from UCLA, and then she crossed the city, that great divide, and earned her master's degree in counseling psychology from USC. She began her career with UCLA as a research coordinator for school violence prevention and trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy programs. She joined Prototypes in 2009 as a managing director of DCFS's funded Prevention Initiative demonstrative project, and has since held several positions within the agency. She is now the managing director at Prototypes, a program of Health Right 360. She directs prevention and domestic violence programs, specifically prevention and aftercare services, youth substance abuse prevention, maternal infant health, and 3 domestic violence resource centers. Ms. Rosamond is dedicated to strengthening youth and families through prevention, advocacy, resilience, and connecting people to their community. Ms. Rosamond is most proud of her work in the development and dissemination of the Cultural Broker Program to address child welfare disparities in the African American community. I'd like to welcome Pastor John Jefferson from Delaware Church. Pastor Jefferson accepted his call to ministry at Kessler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. He pursued his theological education at American Baptist College in Nashville, Tennessee. In March 2000, oh my goodness, Pastor Jefferson was called to Delaware Baptist Church. Under Pastor Jefferson's leadership in 2003, Delaware renovated its dated property. Pastor Jefferson collaborated with Los Angeles County Department of Education and Volunteers of America to create Early Head Start and a Head Start program on the church campus. Pastor Jefferson collaborated with DCFS's Torrance Faith-Based Initiative to create a family visitation center on church grounds. He partnered with the Los Angeles Regional Food Banks to provide food giveaways 3 times a week and a week's worth of groceries to families in need in the Hawthorne and South Bay communities. Pastor Jefferson was appointed to serve on the City of Hawthorne Civil Service Commission. He is also on the board of directors for South Bay Counseling Center. And Pastor Jefferson volunteers as a cultural broker, partnering with African American parents whose children are in the child welfare system. Pastor Jefferson has also been an active foster parent for over 20 years. Finally, I would like to introduce Amber Rose, lead parent partner for Parents in Partnership. Ms. Rose is currently a countywide lead parent partner with the Parents in Partnership program, where she has been providing support to bio families and the community for the past 9 years. Ms. Rose uses her lived experience of navigating the DCFS child welfare system, not only as a bio parent, but also as a former youth in foster care who was in the system for 17 years. Ms. Rose supervises the program operations in 5 of the DCFS's regional offices, Edelman Children's Court, Los Angeles County Jail facilities, both the men and the women's, Invest LA board member, and also part of numerous inter-program structure groups. Ms. Rose holds a position with Center for States Capacity Building as a family consultant and works in a similar fashion supporting communities and the importance of family. Oops, one sec, my battery's about to die. The community importance of family voices. Ms. Rose is currently enrolled in school, working towards her AA and a mother to 5 children. Excuse me, let me make sure my computer's plugged in before I lose all of you on this convening, and that would be a very unhappy situation, but it is 2020 and you never know what's going to happen these days. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're all plugged in and back in 2020. Welcome panelists to CASA of Los Angeles virtual convening. Thank you for being here today. Before we begin, I want to remind you that I will alert you with a 30-second warning so that you know when to begin to wrap up your answers. Unlike the debates in recent weeks, remember, I do have access to that mute button. Haha. I would like to move to the first question, and the order of answers that I will be asking. Question number 1 will be Dennis, then Richard, then Michelle, then Pastor John, and then Amber. So Dennis, can you please share what how your organization supports and encourages parents with young children in the child welfare system? Please include what services and supports you and your organization offer to parents of young children. And I will give you 5 minutes to answer. Go ahead, Dennis.
Thank you. So yes, we are the attorneys for parents who are involved in the system, and we don't become their attorneys until there's actually a case filed. So that left a huge gap for the parents who are involved in the DCFS system, but do not yet have a case filed. They were not entitled to attorneys. There was no way for them to access an attorney, and especially since the vast majority of them are indigent. Ladle does have a staff attorney for every client. We have a supervising attorney supervising every staff attorney. The clients have access to that person as well. And we have social worker investigators who are assigned to cases where appropriate. And we've also, just in the last several months, begun our parent partner program. So we've now just trained our first class of 10 parent partners, and they had a rigorous 10-day training, and they are now out there doing work. And along with that, we started our parent Hope Line. And the Hope Line has been working now for 2 months, and we have already seen detained petitions turn into non-detained petitions, non-detained petitions turn into no petition at all. And yesterday, a family who had all moved back into grandma and grandpa's house. They had a big 5-bedroom house. And of course, because of COVID, all the kids moved back in. Well, it wasn't long before there was a molestation allegation made regarding one of the uncles. And the social worker who first investigated the case couldn't see any way around detaining 2 girls from that family. But they called the parent helpline. The parent partner began working on the case immediately. She knew what the department would want to see. More than that, she knew what the judge would want to see. And I think I'm running out of time. But okay. She got them all enrolled in counseling where appropriate, in sexual abuse awareness counseling where appropriate. She helped the parents. The parents did go out and get a second job so that they could afford to put together the money. They moved out of the family home, found an apartment with 2 bedrooms. They got it. They understood that it didn't matter where or what that apartment was. They needed a place for their family to stay together. And as a matter of fact, right now, as we speak, the parent partner is with them obtaining the restraining order. But today, the case came in. The Department of Children and Family Services tried twice. They filed 2 warrants for removal, and the judge refused to sign either one of them. And when they went into court today, the judge officially released the children to their parents. And that was just as a direct result of our helpline. And that's with people who are trained, have been trained for about 2 weeks to do this. It's just, it couldn't be more exciting. What that means is that we now have a formal place to go, because it used to be that when a mother would become pregnant while she had children in foster care, it was a pipeline. It was just, okay, so when that baby's born, we need to make sure we're there so we can pick up the baby and take that baby right to a foster home. And now that we have the helpline, and now that we are accepting pre-petition filing cases, we can now treat that mother as though this child has already been born, and start putting together a safety plan so that we can make the argument, at least, that child will be safe to stay with the mother, be breastfed by the mother. And as Leslie Heimov, the executive director of Children's Law Center, often says, if a baby's cries could be translated, they would be saying, "I want my mommy." Got it. I'm done.
Perfect timing, Dennis. Could you share the helpline phone number for folks on the webinar?
I will. Let me put it into the chat box.
Okay, thank you. That would be very helpful. And I'm going to stop. And so, Richard, would you like to answer the question? Do you need me to reread it, or are you okay?
I think I just need to unmute. Okay, good.
Okay.
So firstly, I want to echo what Amy said and thank Lori for wrangling us all together and making this happen. The energy and enthusiasm almost matches Dennis's, but not quite. Both of you tough acts to follow, which is a good panel to be on, people who are going to be engaging. So I'm Richard Cohen, and I'll talk a little bit about the work that we did when I was director of Project ABC, which was a federally funded early childhood mental health system of care grant for kids 0 to 5 who were either in the foster care system or at risk of being in the foster care system. And this was an amazing opportunity to, firstly, at the collaborating agencies. We did this in SPA 6 and SPA 8. For those of you who are out of the county, that's the South Bay area of Los Angeles and then South LA areas. To bring together within an agency the therapist, the care coordinator, and the parent partner who were working with a family to have them act as a team and to have that team coordinate with the other organizations that were also in the family's life to try to move things forward, close the cases, and make sure that we were transitioning families, helping families transition into the kinds of situations where we wouldn't get to see them again, which is a big success. And I think that is the approach when there are issues, but we were also happy to be able to work on the front end of things, trying to work on family well-being and prevention so that we're working with families as early as possible and supporting them, particularly families at risk. And I'm doing a lot of work now with the Welcome Baby program, with the Select Home Visitation program, on watching interactions, on identifying kids with potential disabilities who are at greater risk for winding up in the foster care system, and then recognizing all of the implicit biases that are built into the system and built into us. You're
Richard,
muted.
could you tell a little bit about your fatherhood engagement programs?
Yeah, so we have a colleague, Kevin Grunberg, and I have started an organization called Love Dad. And the big purpose of the organization is to try to shift policy and practice around engaging fathers who are often the third wheel in most of our interventions. We love to have them if they're available, but if they're not, we go on. And we're missing a lot of allies and a lot of potential support when we don't do that. And then one of the joys of the program, and this is going to happen for me right after this panel, is that in order to keep ourselves current on what's happening and what it feels like to do this work, Kevin and I both work with dads and babies individually. So it's real life for us. That's what we're doing now.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle, would you like to tell us a little bit more about prototypes, the work you're doing, and also especially the cultural broker program?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me on this panel. I am really honored to be on a panel with lots of different people doing this work from lots of different angles. And I think that's really important because I think it takes everyone to really address the needs of children and families and to help parents. As Lori so graciously introduced us earlier, I oversee our prevention programs and our domestic violence programs at Prototypes. In 2017, Prototypes merged with a larger nonprofit agency called Health Right 360. And Health Right 360 has been around since 1969 and is a larger scale nonprofit organization throughout California. We are in 13 counties, all the way from San Francisco to San Diego County, and have a broad spectrum of services. So we have health clinics and behavioral health, mental health clinics, substance abuse treatment programs that are both outpatient and residential for men and for women. We provide treatment services in prisons and reentry services. We have housing programs for homeless people. And then we have our prevention programs, which is kind of the piece that I oversee. And we probably see a total maybe like 40,000 individuals throughout California. And so being part of prevention means that we get to connect families to all of those spectrum of programs, right? We get to connect with our colleagues and say, a family that we're seeing in prevention, someone that we're meeting in the community is in need of substance abuse treatment, and I can just hand them over to my coworker. And so, you know, it's really a benefit to have just kind of a broad spectrum of programs. So I'm here to talk about our prevention aftercare service prevention program today. It is funded by DCFS, so Department of Children and Family Services in LA County, to provide comprehensive child abuse services. And we are in SPA 3, which, if those of you who don't know, LA County is the San Gabriel Valley. And so we have offices in Pomona, Glendora, El Monte, and Pasadena. And by comprehensive services, that means that we don't do the work alone. We work with our 4 DCFS offices. We work with other county departments, Department of Mental Health, Department of Social Services. We have 6 subcontract agencies. And so like, it really takes a village, right? I know it's overused, but it does. And so what our goal is by comprehensive is that we work with true prevention. So primary prevention services, so families that have no interaction with DCFS. We just might have a family game night and invite people in the community, or a resource fair, or drop-in parenting groups. Pre-COVID, it's online now, but drop-in parenting groups and things like that. So like, they don't have to have any contact with DCFS, but they know who we are. And so then if they have some issues or trouble, then they kind of know to come to Prototypes. Secondary services are for those that have some risk factors. And risk factors are things that we know bring people to the attention of the department. So like unaddressed mental illness, unaddressed addiction, chronic homelessness, domestic violence. So those are the risk factors that we try to mitigate. And then tertiary services are for those that have an open DCFS case. And then our goal is family reunification. And so, you know, those are kind of our spectrum of prevention services. And then we have a cultural broker model. And in our cultural broker model, we have advocates that are specifically are specific to African-American families to address disparity and disproportionality of the African-American community. So they work one-on-one with Black families in the community, and they are the liaison between the family and DCFS. And some of the things that culture brokers might do might be attend court with a parent, just as a support, might attend a child and family team meeting as an advocate, might work one-on-one with that parent to help them work through their case plan, or might advocate to a social worker on behalf of the parent, talking about their strengths, their progress, and really saying that, you know, it may be time to close this case and not postpone. And so in that way, we're really trying to support parents to establish a safe and stable home for them to have their children with them, and to, if all possible, not have a system in their family. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, so much. That was a lot to get in there in 5 minutes. So now I'd like to ask Pastor Jefferson to speak as well. You might need to unmute yourself, Pastor.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm John L. Jefferson, I'm the senior pastor here at Del Air Baptist Church here in Hawthorne. We partner with the Torrance DCFS office, as well as Water Ridge, Lakewood, Vermont Quarter, and West LA. And we provide support to the social workers as well as to the families. We do the advocacy for the parents. As a cultural broker, we try to be in front when those referrals come in. We try to meet with the social worker and the supervisor to help determine whether or not a detention is necessary with this particular family. What are the resources we can bring in as a community liaison, where they need food, housing, connection with other family members. So we work and try to prevent that family from entering into the child welfare system. If the detention is necessary, then we start working with the social worker to try to find those family members so that child can be placed with family members rather than placed in a stranger's home. And then we started working immediately, getting a family, child and family team meeting together. And that meeting, sometimes I have to wear two hats. One, I have to represent the community to make sure the department is doing what it's supposed to do to provide the services to this family and not be overbearing to the family with a long list of things that are not relevant. And then on the other side, sometimes I have to ask the social workers to go out of the office so I can talk to the family and real talk that they understand to help them to move along with the department so they can get those children back as soon as they can. Our church is very unique because I saw that there was a need where these families were meeting in the lobbies of the DCFS office. So one of the things we partnered with, we opened up a visitation center here at our church. We created a living room for the families to come with their children and have a visit here. We also provide food for the families, not just in our community, but also a lot of times when the social workers go out, sometimes the families just need food. And so we provide food for those families. We provide household items for those families. Whatever that family may need, we try to have it here on our campus to help that family. We also have partnered with the department to provide a program for fathers, because we saw a lot of fathers that are being treated and misrepresented in the system. So a lot of them were not being heard. A lot of the issues were going on. So now we work with those fathers and the social workers to make sure that the fathers are being connected to their children. We try to show everyone that the fathers are important to those families and can help facilitate those children getting back with their families sooner. So for the fathers, we provide programs such as we go whale watching. We go to amusement parks. We take them out fishing. We pay for the whole family to go with this father and out on events. And then we are knocking on the doors of the court and also on the department to respect and care for our fathers and treat them just the same as they're treating the mothers. And so, and then we work with the fathers, and we focus on a thing called the little boy on the inside, how he is making decisions that are impacting him, one, as a man, two, as a parent, three, as a partner, and as a member of the community. So once we get the little boy on the inside settle down and calm down, then that changes the father's behavior, because we teach power to rather than power over. And so a lot of fathers are happy about that, because they're able to see the changes within themselves and how that change affects them in their family dynamics. Our ultimate goal is to prevent children from entering into the system, especially African American. I serve on the ERDD, which is the Eradicating Disproportionality and Disparity of African American Families within the Child Welfare System. So I'm the conscience of the department. And a lot of times the department is looking at things at the law, and we're trying to get them to look at it from a human aspect. What is the human aspect of this? A lot of times they say, well, the department has a concern. I say, well, is it the department having the concern or you having the concern? Because the department is just an entity. So we try to get them to understand that sometimes they need to put themselves in a position where they need to say, hey, if I'm that parent on the other side, how would I want this social worker to treat me? And so we try to move past a lot of the institutional racism. We try to move past a lot of the personal issues and get them to focus on what is it that we can do as a team to build and strengthen this family so that it does not come back into the child welfare system. And then also, if there's some things, special circumstances, to connect those children with family members rather than have them in foster care and living with strangers. So, and then the other side, is that social workers need help and they need support. So they oftentimes get beat upon. So we do things for social workers to help them to feel appreciated. like providing waters and snacks and all of those little things for them, just to say, hey, as a community, we want to say we appreciate you and all that you are doing, and to provide just the ear, because sometimes the social workers reading those reports, hearing some of those things that have happened to the families and to the children, they need someone to talk to. So that's what we do with this chaplaincy program out of the Torrance office, is to provide support to those families as
Okay, Pastor John, I'm going to wrap you up right now.
well. I'm through.
Okay. Amber, would you please like to unmute yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, before I even talk about our program, I just want to say that I absolutely love sitting on a panel with so many people who have the same heart as I do, and a passion for the work. I absolutely love it. It just makes my heart so full. So I just want to be a little bit mushy for a second. But so yeah, I'm a countywide lead with the Parents in Partnership program, and it's not just me who does the work, but all the parent partners. And so what we do is we used our lived experience to support parents who either get a referral or have an open case with DCFS. And so we're co-located within all the DCFS offices. And not only is our lived experience as but you know, a lot of us are also former foster youth as well. And so we, you know, we're able to sit at the table with the AB 12 work groups that they have going on to make sure that we're focusing on those parents as well, whether they're still in care or emancipated or on their own, or whatever the case may be. But the work that we do is sitting there in the CFTs, helping the parents and the workers kind of coming together as a neutral person for both sides to kind of help understand each other. And for me personally, I always say, you know, we're not bad people. We just made bad decisions, and sometimes we just need help. And just reminding people of those things absolutely helps. And so we offer a support group to our parents, and COVID has kind of changed things a little bit for us, just because we can't do it in person anymore. But, you know, us parent partners were very innovative and decided we're going to just do things via Zoom, and we're going to find ways, even there, if it's a phone call, that's what we're doing. And so we do support groups. And then also we have our parent orientations that, you know, again, we share our experience, but then we walk them through the process. And so, and that's the court process, the, you know, how to team up, how to work with your social worker, visitation rights, their responsibilities as a parent, because sometimes, you know, we need to take responsibility for our part in all of it. And so just helping the parents kind of get that, and just being a support for the parents. And so, that's a huge chunk of what we do, but also we sit at many, many tables. So we're part of the cultural brokers, we're part of ERDD. We also were trained for fatherhood. And so we absolutely want to make sure, I am one of the people who go into the men's jails and work with the fathers, the incarcerated fathers, and the experience that I got from that, you know, they're very underrepresented. And so that really pushed us into making sure that we were trained in engagement. And so the beauty of our program is that we are contracted with DCFS, so we get all the same trainings. You know, we're part of the core practice model implementation. We're there at the table for all the trainings. And so we get to have a different perspective of, all right, we've been through the system. We know, you know, what it's like to be a parent. But then, like, there's all these practice and policies that go along with DCFS, and kind of merging them together with helping parents and workers kind of come to the table, because at the end of the day, we want kids to go home to safe homes with their parents. And if not parents, then family, you know, or somebody who's going to care for those children. And so that's really what our program does. Anybody can reach out to our program. We try and link up with all the resources. So a lot of the people who are on the panel, we try and link up with them so that the parents, it could be that one resource, you know, for housing or for food or to get a job, anything. We're always trying to find ways that we can help parents be in a better place than they were when they came into the light of DCFS, you know. So we do preventative work, but a lot of the work that we do is when parents are already engaged. We do, you know, we walk the floors at court again, pre-COVID, we do walk the floors at court to make sure in those times of like, I don't know what's going to happen when I walk into that courtroom, that there's a parent partner that's there giving them information, linking them up with the parent partner in their regional office. And so we're really there just to support the parents wherever they are, you know? So, but again, I just want to say thank you for Lori for, asking me to be on this panel, and for all the people on this panel. I absolutely love just the passion that goes along with this work. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to comment for a moment, having been doing this work for a very, very long time. It is so heartwarming to see so many more programs to support parents with kids in the system, instead of it just really being services outside or a legal representation, but instead a comprehensive network of support, because that's acknowledging what our kids need is they need their parents to have the support. So thank you all for saying yes when I called or emailed or wrangled into doing this panel. So the next question is a much more invasive question, and another one that has become very apparent this year with the deaths of George Floyd and many other individuals. How do you see that racism impacts the work that you do with parents, and what suggestions might you share to change the narrative? I'll give you each 7 minutes. I'm going to start with the same order this time. I'm going to start again with Dennis, and Dennis, you have 7 minutes.
I don't have anything new to say on this subject, but there are some things that can bear repeating. So I think that it's just really important that whether people believe it or not, that they take the leap of faith and acknowledge that this is a racist system, that on many levels this is a racist country. And if I live, and if that is where I live and I work, then there is no way that I cannot be racist. I am racist. And my goal is every single day to wake up and get out of bed and try my best to take anti-racist actions and to educate myself in ways that I never knew I needed to be educated. To read the books, not to force my Black friends to teach me. This is something that we white people have to figure out on our own. There will be, as we make friends and we make allies, there will be plenty of advice that comes our way. There's some amazing books that I would recommend. How to Be an Anti-Racist, it changed my life. And this is an anti-racist book, is kind of the more simpler, more fun, more brightly colored version of it, but still equally helpful. There are a couple of situations that I have come across that have not been properly addressed. One of them is the guardian ad litem situation. I'm sure you've all seen cases where a parent had a guardian ad litem appointed for them. What that means is that that parent's voice is silenced. Their participation in that case, based on what they want and do not want, does not matter anymore. The person who is appointed their guardian ad litem, which is usually a ladle attorney, when it should be, if one absolutely had to be appointed, it should be a family member. The ladle attorney, so me, the last time before I became executive director, the last time I came across this, a 60-year-old white man's voice was substituted for a 28-year-old Black man's. And when I was appointed his guardian ad litem and went out and talked to him, there was no reason why he needed a guardian ad litem, except that the judge didn't like what he was saying. He had gotten his hands online on all of that sovereign citizen nonsense. And because it sounded good to him, because it told him what he wanted to know, because it told him this is the way to get your children back, he followed it. There is no difference between him and my education in any high school or college or law school class I've been in. I was given the information and I learned it. He was just given different information. So I had a sense after this many years in the system about what was going on with these guardian ad litems. So, but now I took a poll of all 5 Ladle law firms. At that time, on that day, there were 48 guardian ad litems that had been appointed on those cases. And of all of the 48 of those guardian ad litems, there was 1 white male who had a guardian ad litem. Every other guardian ad litem was taking the voice away of either a Black man or a woman of color. And no one really wanted to hear it, you know. But I gave trainings, I used what influence I have. But that's one of those areas where I was just one person. I just thought I saw something. I took an informal poll and I came up with something that was clearly racist. So I took just a vague idea of racism, and now I had something actually that I could talk to people about, a message that I could carry. And I can't persuade everybody, but I've persuaded some people. And I do believe that as Ladle goes, that it is much harder to get a guardian ad litem today than it was 3 years ago. The last thing I want to say is that the way we come to our clients in these cases is often determinative. It often determines how the case is going to turn out. And so if I have a client who is very, very frustrated, who feels they've been taken advantage of, who feels they've been lied to, and I say, you know, my client is very upset. Okay, so we get that, and that's clearly, you know. But if I let someone say, oh, he's an angry Black man, if I let that happen to one of my clients, that's not a situation, being upset, that requires assistance. Angry Black man is a label that can then prevent him forever from getting his children back. There are, in almost every aspect of these cases, that needs to be paid attention to. We need to be cognizant of how the words we use label people or invite assistance or invite exclusion. So that's what I have to say on that subject, and I will give my time over to people who have far more authority in this area.
Thank you, Dennis, very, very much. Richard, would you like to address the question how racism impacts the work that you're doing with parents?
Sure. And I think to begin with, I want to note how carefully Lori wrote this question, which is how racism affects the work with children and parents. It's not how does racism in DCFS or how is DCFS a racist system. And I think this picks up on what Dennis is talking about. Is one of the things that we know is that the child welfare system generally that we have is a reflection of the larger community. And to the degree that racism is endemic in the community, it will show up in child welfare and at many, many levels. This is not to beat up on DCFS, not to completely let everybody off the hook either, but DCFS has been working for quite a few years now on the disproportionality issue, and the data that Lori gave us in the original poll are really important, because what she didn't say is that while it's about 8 or 9% of kids in LA County who are Black, 24% of the open cases are Black. So the disproportionality is about 300%, right? And they don't, and that's because of the calls that get in, of the support that families get before anybody makes a call. There are lots of external reasons why this happens. And I would add one more thing, and then I'll jump into my kind of structural issue, which is this panel is specifically about young children. And one of the things that we did, and Charisse is here, Lori is here, a number of people from the committee on the Young Children in Care Committee, was to try to make sure that that we helped DCFS see children 0 to 5 as a special population. Turns out they're over 40% of the open cases, but a special population in terms of their need for attachment in order to thrive, the effects of the loss. Not that other kids aren't affected by loss, by being pulled out of their families, but this is a very special population that we need to be very aware of, supporting families so we can reduce the number of detentions. They're also in care longer. Most of the county has gone to detention times of under 12 months, but 0 to 3 is still over that. And the largest individual group of kids is 0 to 1. So we're talking about a very vulnerable group here, wildly disproportionately placed in the system. And one of the issues, again, this is a structural racism system issue that I'm going to bring up. Sounds a little technical, but or I don't know, not boring, but it's not a slap in the face kind of racism. It's a bias in the whole system. And one of the things that we know is that there is a higher percentage of fathers not living with mother and baby in the African American community. But we also know that there's a large percentage of those dads who are connected. They see themselves as part of a family. They're just not living with the mom and the baby. And higher than in other communities. And so when we detain kids, when we focus all of our programs and all of our efforts on mom and baby, because the father's not available, you know, when it's not just DCFS, but when any of us starts working with the family, if the dad's not there, we think, okay, dad's not there, not involved. And we don't go back and find out, well, is this father involved? How is he involved? What support role can he play here? And if the mother can't care for the child, where's the dad? And so many times we just ignore the fact that there's a father nearby. And yet these are often fathers who are already engaged with their children. It's not like we're going to call them up and say, hey, by the way, you've got a kid. Can we drop him off now? No, these are dads who are involved with their kids, and then we don't do what we can to bring them in, to take advantage of the opportunity to work with them. And again, the structural racism part is that this situation is more prevalent in the African American community. So while we're treating all of the families the same, not very productive way, the effect on African American families is greater. And we just are not aware of it.
Anything else that you'd like to add, Richard?
I cede my time and Dennis's time to the rest of the panel.
Okay. Michelle, would you like to answer or share your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, absolutely. I like the way Richard kind of phrased it, where, you know, there is bias and systemic racism in lots of systems. And so child welfare is kind of one place where it's showing up. But we, you know, we have to acknowledge there is a bias problem. We see in our families that Black families tend to not be given the benefit of the doubt. They're scoring higher on risk and safety assessments. You know, children are pulled out of the home, you know, when there's uncertainty about the ability of the parent to keep them in the home in a safe way and continue their case plan. And so when there's those gray areas, I think is where we see our families not given the benefit of the doubt. And what that looks like is exactly what Richard was talking about. It looks like it shows up as disparity and disproportionality. You know, we are also part of the same work group that many others on this panel are, ERDD, which is Eliminating Racial Disparity and Disproportionality. We have been part of this since 2008. We've been in this work for a really long time. And what the bias shows up as is, you know, 8%, 7 to 8% of children in the population are African American. But as Richard said, 24% of those in the DCFS system are Black and African American. And, you know, so the proportion of Black kids and families in the system doesn't match the proportion in the population. So that's what disproportionality means. And then the disparity part is that there are different treatment and outcomes. So out of all the children in foster care who exit the system, only 23% of them are Black kids who exit the system, which means that Black children are most likely to stay in the system too long. They're less likely to be reunited with their family. They're less likely to achieve permanency. They're more likely to age out of the system and then to move from one system to another, often the justice system. And so it goes beyond even child welfare. It kind of sets them up for life, right? To go from one system to another. And that's where we need to intervene, and we need to have real clear strategies, to be real intentional about what we're doing, to really break that cycle and stop that pipeline. So with prototypes, with our prevention aftercare, we have 5-point strategy. I mean, we are super clear that this is our mission, and this is part of the work that we do. We have culture brokers, which I've talked about. The culture brokers are needed to advocate for families. They really can change the trajectory of a case. They can really help social workers who are in that gray area, show them the strengths, show them ways that maybe the children can stay in the family with some supportive services. The culture brokers can help with kinship care, can help find family members who are willing to take the children so that the children are staying with family. And just to be a resource for families, to connect them to services, to do that navigation, connect them to resources in the community, make sure that those resources are appropriate, and support them through that case plan. So it's really needed. The other one is father engagement. We have fatherhood groups throughout the San Gabriel Valley. We have groups that are run by Black fathers. All of our father groups are run by men. I think that's really important. Part of our work is really, we have to defy the lie that men do not want to be part of children's lives or that they are unimportant. That is absolutely a lie. And so to be that advocate for fathers, and maybe if that individual, that father is not the safest or the most healthiest person, his family, his people could be, but if no one looks any further, then we don't even know that. The other thing is effective Black parenting. So our cultural brokers run effective Black parenting groups. And it's just a parenting group that has a cultural lens, so behavior strategies and things like that. But the affinity of the parents working together becomes their own little community, and they get to bond and learn and lean on each other. We do cultural trainings, workshops on implicit bias. We just did one on intersectionality of race and trauma. And then we are also part of advocacy groups. So for example, in the San Gabriel Valley, we're part of AIM, which is African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Work Group, to address health disparities and birth disparities in Black families. The disparities start from birth. The child welfare system is not the first place that parents and families are experiencing these disparities. So I think the work needs to be real intentional. We have to be real clear about what we're doing, and make sure that we're doing everything kind of within our power to make sure that Black families have a voice and a choice in the services that they receive, and they have advocates by them to help them be empowered. Thank you.
Michelle, one thing I noticed in your response kind of is the differences between formal interventions that you connect parents with, but also the informal interventions and supports that the cultural brokers bring that can be involved well past when child welfare might be involved. Because oftentimes there's a desert of services or a desert of resources in some of our communities. And being able to work with the cultural broker, actually you find those hidden resources and supports to help families, if they've been pulled into child welfare and leave, stay out of child welfare. So thank you for bringing that forward. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the aftercare piece where we can stay with them after a case is closed. But Pastor Jefferson can talk really well about those informal supports. So I will hand that over to him.
Pastor Jefferson, I think that is a perfect transition to you right now. You need to unmute yourself, please.
Okay.
There you go.
So, wow. Let me just give you guys two things here, two cases. One case where a father got into a physical altercation with his son. Son got the best of the father grabbed a chair and hit the son with the chair. Police call, DCFS goes out, leave the child in the home. Other case, father's disciplining his daughter because he's continually telling her about telling the truth, and she continues not to tell the truth, and he swats her 4 or 5 times on her bottom with an open hand and leaves fingerprint mark on her buttocks. Tell me which one of those children were detained. The child where the father swat her on the butt. What was the ethnicity? The father of the child that used the chair to fend off was white, and the father that swatted his daughter on the butt was black. And I raised the question, why wasn't the father who used the chair on his son detained, and why was the father who swatted his child on the butt detained? Nobody can give an answer. When you look at it, the worker that went out on the case with the chair was Latino. The case where the father went out, where the search work went out on the father with the daughter was African American. Big difference. It happens. We have to try to work with people to understand that African American folk discipline their children different than other people, because we have to make sure that our children learn, one, how to operate in society different than other folk of other ethnicity, teaching their children how to operate in society. Society does not believe that African American people can care for and treat their children and their families with respect and dignity. So therefore, we have to intervene because they don't know how to care for their family. When you go to a court, you look at the courtroom, 9 times out of 10, the person that's sitting on the judge, sitting on the bench wearing a robe is another ethnicity other than African American. The attorney is going to be a different ethnicity other than African. So you have 3 attorneys in there. Majority of them will all be of another color other than that African American family sitting there. And everybody's making decisions for that African American family, and they're not getting their voice heard. And so we have to come alongside and work with that family to help them work within a system that is already designed to make sure that they do not excel. It's the same mentality as this. Back in slavery days, when master came, and he would oftentimes remove the children from the family and sell them off. So that's what's happening when DCFS come. We have that same mentality because the department determines that the family is not able to care for those children. So we remove those children and put them in a better place. And oftentimes that better place is not the better place for our families. So we have to work with these families to help them to get their stuff together, to reach within inside themselves, to operate in the system that they already distrust, to get them to try to trust the system, to do the things that they need to do to get their families back in order. It's all about perception and all about the view of those people. As culture brokers, we come alongside. We help these families understand how to move and operate in this system. And once they get through the system, we come back with other support and services to them to help them so they do not return. Once the social worker closes the book, once the judge hands down the gavel, that's it. But there's still work that has to be done to improve these family lives. And it's more than just giving them some services and a piece of paper say we're going to these places. We have to work with these families. And that's where I think it's important where these culture brokers come in and also the faith community comes in. Because if you go back into our history, you understand everything that we needed, we found it at the church house. The pastor is the chief of our community. So if we needed a job, we go tell the pastor, I need a job. Pastor knew somebody in the community that was working a job, had a job open. So we have to get back to this place of supporting our families through our faith community to reassure them and to build them up and let them know that they can exist in this society, that they can thrive in this society, no matter what society throws at you. We are the only race of people that are in this country involuntarily. That means we did not choose to come here. We were brought here by force. And that idea and that mentality that we are less than human has been spread down throughout the ages. We can't get past it. It's still being taught that Black folk are less than everybody else. But when you pull the skin back, we're all the same. We need the help. We need the support to help our families grow. Advocacy is very important. And getting people to understand, to hear the voice and the cries of these families is very, very important. We need to treat these families just as if we are in need of services ourselves. Housing, food, clothing, assistance with transportation, having somebody to come talk to. We've discovered that it's hard for fathers to talk to a female social worker about his issues or a person of another race about his issues. But what we've learned is that when we have African-American facilitators in these groups that are meeting the needs of these fathers, listening to them, understanding them as they are as men, treating them with respect as men, and helping them to work through their issues as men. And oftentimes we have to help them to come to understand that sometimes it may be something that I have done, something that I may have said that put me in this situation. So I'm going to work on improving myself so that I can improve the life and the quality of my family. That's why it's important for us to look beyond the color of our skin. And as Martin Luther King said, beyond the content of our character, look past the color of our skin, but look at the content of our character. These families have a desire to do well and to prosper, but there's a system in place that is designed to keep them oppressed. And we have to work with them to work through this oppression so that they no longer can feel or sense the oppression, but be filled to be empowered and part of a society that is thriving and loving. And so that's what we have to do. We have to pay attention to everything that is going on. Everything that happens in society should not happen within the child welfare system. And a lot of times we find ourselves responding to what happens out in society, and we bring that over into the child welfare system that it impacts our family. We have to stop that. We have to give every family the same effort and due diligence that they need to help them to grow. That's very, very important. Sometimes I have to call social workers out on the carpet because sometimes my feelings. No, baby, it's not about your feelings. It's about what it is that this family needs right now. So we have to put your feelings to the side and let's focus on what this family needs right now, because they're more important than your feelings. And that's one of the things that we do. We need more culture brokers.
I'm going to have to wrap you up. As much as I want you to keep going, I do want to let Amber have her chance to respond to this as well. But thank you. You brought up some very powerful points, and also highlighting protective factors, the concrete supports and social connections and programs to help the parents develop their own capacities. So thank you for highlighting those as well, Pastor. Amber, would you like to answer this question about racism in how it impacts the work that you do, and any suggestions as to change?
So everything that everybody shared was fantastic, and I feel like you guys touched on everything. But so being somebody who's in the office and kind of gets to see the interactions like a fly on the wall, it wasn't until I actually started seeing the data from ERDD, actually participating in it, and even though I was like around it, I didn't know like that's what was happening. And so, and I'll use, example. A father may go in and act passionately and I'm going to use the words that are used. Let's say two fathers go in and one's acting passionately because he's upset that his children were detained. But then we have another father who acts aggressively because his children were detained. And so as these things started happening, it was the African-American father who was labeled in the court report as being aggressive and threatening, and the worker was scared, as opposed to the white father who was passionate about his children being removed. And I say that to say, and I absolutely want to say that I know that this is not about DCFS. I know that this is about systems in place. And so, but I use that as an example of kind of being that fly on the wall and like, wait a second, like these are two exact same situations, but how people are labeled. And so, you know, with the work that I've done in the jails and working with the fatherhood program and all that, like I'm huge on statistics. And so in 2016, and please don't quote me on this because I'm trying to remember, I believe it was 77% of incarcerated people in the state of California had all been in child welfare. As a child, had been in child welfare. And so we talk about systems, we talk about fathers not being in the home. Where are they? Are we having, you know, kids graduating from DCFS going into the justice system, and why are they not at home? And so all of these systems kind of come into place. And then you think even further than that, if I have a criminal record, and even some of our parent partners struggled getting a position, having to explain why they were incarcerated, based on systems that, you know, like it's the racism that happens in the system. And so then we have, you know, fathers who are unable to provide because they can't get a job, or mothers who are unable to provide because they can't get a job, in all of the systems. And so as parent partners, we're doing what we can to help link parents up with programs that will, you know, are for like previously incarcerated or for single moms or whoever it is. And again, I want to say, like, it wasn't until I started going to the data information being shared did I even realize, because, you know, I was in foster care for 17 years and then my kids were removed within 2 years after. And so I've literally been a part of, and my mom and uncle were also in foster care. So my kids were third generation, you know, so the system was something that I absolutely knew a lot about. And so I just didn't know that it was like, that's what it was called. And so one thing that, and I people may not agree with me, but I think as parents, we're looked at as like, you guys really need to deal with your stuff. You need to deal with your trauma. You need to deal with the things that, you know, got you to a place where you're making these choices. However, social workers and not just social workers, I'm talking about police officers, I'm talking about teachers, I'm talking about people who work with the public who are making those judgment calls, need to take care of their stuff too. Because I think when, you know, we did an implicit bias training, and like, it was amazing it wasn't amazing, it was like heartbreaking to see the words that were put on the screen of your colleagues when they asked what their first thoughts were when they see a Black young male. Like, that's the reality, is that in society, in everyday people, we have these implicit biases, and we'll say, yeah, everybody has them, but is anybody addressing those things? Is anybody calling people out on that? And I think like we're in a time where we absolutely need to, like, there's a post that I saw the other day. It says, if you're not saying anything about racism, then you're participating in it, period. And I absolutely believe that, you know, and it's going to take everybody. We talk about communities, everybody being a part of the community and making a stand to make the changes. Well, that starts in our own homes too. That starts in our own offices, and the people that the little jokes we tell, or not calling people out on, you know, like, hey, why did you remove, or why did you pull that person over? Or, you know, did you talk to that as a teacher? Like, did you talk to the parent of that child to find out what happened? Or did you just make a judgment call based on what you saw? And I think, like, as a parent partner, I try and keep it as real as I possibly can without stepping on any toes, being respectful. But I think it's about that time. And why are we not sharing these data with everybody in the office? I've been a parent partner for 9 years, and maybe about a year and a half ago did I start seeing data on disproportionality. Like, people need that in their face all the time. It needs to be shared with the communities, with teachers, with anywhere. It needs to be shared so that people know that this isn't make believe. This is stuff that's absolutely happening, and it's in all systems. And like, let's take a look at ourselves and where our own stuff comes from. It's not just about parents needing to clean up their own side of the street. Everybody needs to take a look at themselves and clean up their side of the street. So I hope that made sense. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you for everyone for your honest and upfront answers. I hate ending at that 7 minutes at that point, but we do have one more question to go. And I was going to give you 7 minutes in the last question, but we're going to give you 5 so that we can have Q&A at the end. What barriers, including COVID, exist to accessing the supports that you've been referencing for parents? And how do you suggest professionals or CASAs or folks in the community best collaborate with parents of these young children? And I'm actually going to start with Amber this time. And I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes instead of 7.
I'll make it quick. So I think one of the things that we're struggling with right now is, and I know everybody's really scared with COVID, but you know, parents are not able to fully complete what the courts are asking them to do. And you know, and I talked about this not too long ago, trying to find places that are either virtually doing things, and is it okay for the workers? Because a lot of times the parents are told, like, oh, you can't do online things, like that's not okay, or it's not court approved through this online resource. And so we are trying to do our part to link parents up with resources that they can comply with what the court orders are being done. But also, you know, DCFS workers, any advocates out there, any support systems, trying to link them up with those supports that may be out of the box. I mean, we quickly found ways to communicate with each other through Zoom, WebEx, a bunch of other, you know, types of services. And so why not? Why can't we link parents up with those services? Visitation, I know right now is one of the, even pre-COVID, it was a struggle to make sure that parents got their court ordered, you know, 3 times a week, 3 hours each visit. It was a struggle. And now it's way worse. But specifically talking about kids ages 0 to 5, and this is something that I tell my fathers, that when I work in the jails, a phone call to an infant child is just as valuable as if you were in person speaking. They need to know your voice. Even if you're on the phone for 2.5 seconds, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, however long, letting them hear your voice. I think that is so important. And as advocates, we need to make sure that even if it's a virtual meeting, visitation that's happening, that they're actually happening. And that the social workers are making sure that those things are happening. Resources in certain communities were unavailable to begin with. Like the wait list was forever. And so just finding new innovative ways, I think, is to support parents in those communities. I think that's where we need to start. So that way, we want kids coming back home, we need more resources. We need those programs, we need them. And I know COVID kind of puts that curveball, but just being flexible with it. And as social workers, being able to work with the parents on what they're trying to do, you know. And yeah, I think that it's times that we've never really experienced before. So I know it's new for everybody, but just finding those ways that we can really work together. I always tell the parents I work with, like, we're on a team. We may not like the team all the time, but it is what it is. And so we need to just, you know, put our best foot forward and do whatever it is that we can to try and win the game. And that's that permanency for your children in a safe and healthy home. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, Richard.
Well, there are tons of barriers, and COVID has exacerbated most of them, but I think I want to pick up mostly on what Amber talked about and then see that COVID is an opportunity. You know, we want to be able to see, to those of you who are particularly CASAs, we need to clean up our side of the street, right? Our predispositions are, you read the case file, you hear what happened, and you think, oh my God, we want to keep these children with these people. And I think that it's really important that we recognize that kids, the research is pretty clear that with the right supports, kids do better at home than with a very nice upper middle class family who would be willing to take them in, right? The long-term implications are better. The outcomes are better for kids. So we want to switch our thinking to think, how can we support this family so that the kids can stay home? Even if it's a parent or a pair of parents that are not immediately the most attractive parents, it's not the point. That's where we have to clean up our side of the street. And I think that that's particularly true. Pastor Jefferson was talking about it, and Amber did too, in thinking about those aggressive Black dads, right? And one of the things that we learned from touch points with T. Barry Brazelton, and I won't go into the detail, is value passion where you find it. When you think about all of the reasons that Pastor Jefferson gave us, why someone African-American who had their kids taken away from them would be pissed off, what that tells you is that this is a family that wants to keep their kids, right? They want to do a good job. We can start there and move forward. And I think that COVID offers us an opportunity. You get the chance by having to work virtually to practice having a different perspective about angry parents, not just dads, about parents and shift your perspective to see them as passionate. They are not a danger to you on Zoom. I'm really serious. So you can bring people together. You can have people who are not in the same place, two parents who are not together, but both care about their kids, can be on the same call. You can be with them, and you can make a difference here by having what you consider a safe encounter, because there's no physical threat here, and to say, oh, you know what? I get it. He's pissed off. She's really hurt and angry. The PIPs are great at working with families in these kinds of ways, the parents in partnership that Amber works with. But I think COVID offers us an opportunity to re-examine our own biases and to practice being successful with parents whom we would not normally be as comfortable with. And if we shift ourselves around from that, eventually this is going to be over, and we can all go back to meeting together with a different perspective on how we can support parents.
Thank you, Richard. Michelle, would you like to answer the question?
Absolutely. I think there were so many barriers before COVID that our navigators had to help parents overcome. And COVID, just like some of the others said, just completely exacerbated some of these barriers. But there are some opportunities there as well. So I agree with Richard too. I think with COVID, Black families really faced two pre-existing conditions, right? One was race and racism, and some of the health disparities that were already happening in our system. And then the other one is some of the economic challenges pre-existing, so access to resources and all of that. So I think our community got hit with like a double whammy when it came to COVID, and then just the fear of like having a life-threatening lethal virus out there. You know, and having loved ones become sick and pass away and not being able to mourn them and all of that. And so kind of what we did for some of these barriers is that we moved all of our services virtually online, with permission from DCFS. And so for those of you who are looking for supports for your families, I put in the chat, but I'm just going to say here, contact your local DCFS office and ask who is your prevention and aftercare agency in your region, and find out, what that agency is offering. So for us, all of our groups that were in person, that are evidence-based group and curriculum-based groups, or even support groups, all went virtually. And so the same criteria and court requirements are still being met. And so they still do satisfy all court requirements. So we did that. We did telehealth. We did all of our services online. Lots of families had economic challenges. They were living check to check before COVID. Many were in a cash economy, braiding hair and babysitting or cleaning houses or fixing cars. And so they didn't qualify for unemployment or undocumented. Those who did qualify for unemployment had challenges with EDD, trying to get on unemployment. So people were extreme, like went from zero income like that, just overnight. And so some of the things that our navigators are doing were just like showing them where food pantry was, sending out resources where, this church is having a food drive on Tuesday, this one's having a food drive on Wednesday, just kind of hitting them all up. We provided gift cards and we gave donations and did that as well. But it like we need all of it, right? To support the families. Moratoriums on evictions was not a thing for our families. So lots of families who could not pay rent were told that you are evicted. Like the landlord would say, we can't get the sheriff to put you out, but you are evicted. And so that stress of not knowing where they're going to live, all of that. So just kind of connecting them to housing programs and resources. And then the emotional support. So like I said, we did groups online. We do all the groups that are required of cases like anger management and domestic violence and parenting. But then we also did like yoga groups online. We also did like art, we would mail art packages to the families and then just do like art over Zoom. Just things for people to feel connected, because the isolation is real. And people who may not have been depressed or anxious before COVID became during COVID. Lots of families had situations at home that were not comfortable. And so their daily life pattern helped them to escape it. So they got up, they went to work, they brought the kids to school, they weren't home. And so now with COVID, they're just home all the time in this kind of pressure cooker situation. And so people who may be in abusive relationships or didn't even know they were in an abusive relationship, just became escalated. And so we've had to do quite some work with domestic violence training and resources, and kind of helping families with that. And then I think another major barrier was the digital divide. So families who didn't have Wi-Fi, didn't really think about it, didn't have laptops or computers, were really kind of left out. Lots of my families qualify for free phones. Okay. We call it the Obama phone. I'm not sure what the real title of the phone is called, but usually they were a smartphone enough that they could download a Zoom app, or they could absolutely do a telehealth session and things like that. But those families that got like Chromebooks from the school district that didn't work and didn't have enough Wi-Fi at home, like that was a challenge, and they were watching their kids fail in school and really couldn't do anything about it. So many challenges. We just kind of worked at it piece by piece to help people overcome. And we just had to pivot and adapt and be responsive to what was going on in the world, which was something that we have never experienced before. So that's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I have to cut you off. Pastor, would you like to comment on some of the barriers that parents face in terms of accessing services, including but not limited to COVID?
Well, one, because of COVID, a lot of the caregivers that were having the children in their home will not allow the children out to visit with their parents because of the fear of the COVID-19. And then a lot of times the social workers did not want to transport the children to and from the visit. So that was a major barrier. So one of the things that we did here at our church is we opened up our visitation center. Everybody had to, I use our volunteers here to sanitize the place, but I told all the DCFS offices in my area, hey, our visitation center is open. Let those families come here and visit with their children. The other thing is, again, all the services, some of the services went dark. People were not able to connect with the services. So one of the things that we did here is we have our fathers, the ones that could come. We have a large fellowship hall, so we did social distancing, and fathers were able to come for our program, Thriving Dad, so that they can participate. Some of the fathers did not have the resources and stuff to get their kids computers and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked with one of the county supervisors to get kids computers so that they could, we gave them to the fathers so the fathers can give them to the children. So, you know, again, empowering that father.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the other services is that making the services available to them. So some of the things, just cutting off our food drive, what we did was we did a drive-through. So as I just posted on the thing there, we're going to be having a drive-through this Saturday from 9 to 1. Families will be able to come drive through and get a week's worth of groceries and then some. So a lot of things that COVID presented, we had to think outside of the box and operate as just as eagerly as we can to make sure these families stay connected. And I think, like everybody said, we're doing the best we can. The problem that we're facing is getting the resources out to those families, knowing what those resources are, and how do we make them available to those families.
Okay, thank you. Wow, under time, I love it. Dennis, would you like to wrap up the panel with this final question? You might need to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Great. All right. So just a few things. First of all, I just want to point something out, that when judges are holding parents to 100% compliance with their case plan before they will return children, we have to point out that that's not the way the world is working. As a matter of fact, even the state bar lowered the passing rate in light of COVID from 1440 to 1390. So at the very least, our judges should also be lowering the passing rate of what is necessary for parents to do in order to get their children back. The transportation, Amber, absolutely, the transportation is first of all the single most important factor in determining whether a child will return to their home is the quality and the frequency of the visitation. And the law is that those visits be as liberal as possible, keeping in mind that one has to protect the safety of the child. And yet that is not the way we look at it. That is not the way almost anybody looks at it. Most people look at it like, okay, does this visit need to be monitored? And then at what point can we go from a monitored visit to an unmonitored visit? That's not the law. The visit is supposed to be unmonitored unless you need to make it monitored to protect the safety of the child. Does everybody, I mean, I hope everybody sees that distinction, because it is absolutely critical that we approach these families knowing what they are entitled to and what they deserve, and not approach them trying to see how we can limit them, what barriers we can put up for them. Also, one of the barriers that we have is, practically everybody who's watching this video must be a kind person. You don't go into this work because you want to be mean to people. We're all kind people. And yet sometimes we leave our kind hats at home. And I don't know why that is. I actually teach it. I would say that my lawyers would probably say it's one of the top 3 things that I mentioned to them that are requirements for this job. But when you approach, when you have a client calling you and they're totally frustrated, and you say to them, wait a minute, you've reached somebody who wants to help you. You've reached the right person. I want to help you, but let's back up a minute, and so that I can hear you and so I can understand it. Everything changes. Everything changes. And when you you know, when you call up someone, I used to tell them that they had a requirement when they would go out of the courtroom and meet with a client that they had to smile. They had to put a smile on their face no matter what had happened in the courtroom. Well, now they said, well, how do we do that now? I said, oh, you don't think you can see a smile over the phone? You absolutely can hear a smile over the phone. Try it. So to me, it seems simple. It's maybe a little Pollyanna-ish, but I believe it's one of the most important things we can do, and that is to be kind, not just with our clients, but with each other.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. And I can attest that Dennis's voicemail actually has, "How can I help you today?" on his voicemail. So he definitely sets that up as well. I just want to say I'm in awe of all of you. You have inspired me. I feel more confident that parents are getting support. We're still a work in progress. Our system is still structurally racist. And there are many walls that parents have to crawl, climb, go under, around. But we all have to remember, and I say this to all our attendees, and I think Amber brought this up, or Michelle, in terms of the trauma that happens when young kids are removed from their parents. There is a relationship there. There is a video, if I can remember, online of a comedian who is at his daughter's birth, and the daughter's screaming and doing all of those things that babies do when they come out, and he starts talking to the baby and the baby goes quiet. And then the baby starts screaming and doing all that again. And then the baby not only goes quiet, but opens her eyes to look at her dad when her dad says, "I love you." So babies do recognize voices and recognize faces as they progress. So it's important to, if we can't visit in person, use the virtual means. So we just have a couple of questions. Some have been answered already, but one of them is directed towards you, Amber. Is there Spanish language component to the Parents in Partnership?
Yes, absolutely. I apologize for not stating that. We do everything. We have Spanish speaking parent partners, CFT participation. We have Spanish orientation, support groups. Unfortunately, that's the only other language we have right now. Our numbers of parent partners are diminishing. Thanks a lot. But yeah, so everything we have is in Spanish as well. So.
Okay. We have another question from CASA that they've done a lot of work with caregivers and resource families, but it may not have been appropriate to meet with the parents. What suggestions can the panel have to help CASA's children's connect with their agencies? I'm not fully, let's see, what suggestion can panel make to help my CASA children parents? Maybe the parents are resistant to connecting with DCFS or services. So what suggestions may you have in terms of encouraging, or what words can be said to the parents if they're hesitant to reach out to the agencies for support or help?
Well, I think that if you're ever having trouble getting through to a parent, you should always call the lawyer. I don't know why this divide has been created, but it's really an artificial divide. And I think we should all be talking together. Everybody who's connected with a family, there should be nobody we won't talk to until someone proves to us that they're not going to be an appropriate member of the conversation. Then maybe you have to stop. But I can tell you that none of the lawyers at Ladle are going to give you a problem, and CASAs have nothing to fear from parents' lawyers. And frankly, I don't think they have anything to fear from most parents either. But Ladle lawyers are always happy to intervene to increase the community and to make sure that the entire community involved with that parent is on the same page.
Okay. And there are supervisors of attorneys, because Dennis, I'll be blunt, sometimes attorneys haven't called CASAs back, even though we're encouraging. So all attorneys have supervisors that could be reached out to?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I add, I think that one of the, not to point at the question, but this word resistance You know, it is not irrational for people to be concerned that if they express to DCFS that they're having trouble and need some help, that's not going to help their case move forward and get closed. And so being able to find, not to go around DCFS, but to be able to find resources that parents need without going through DCFS, but make sure that they know. And I think this is true it's not just DCFS. I mean, when you're working with a family, you tell them how much you can help them and how in that first meeting. And then the last thing you say is, don't worry about it, but you know, I'm a mandated reporter, right? We say that and then we can't understand why parents are not that excited about working with us and telling us what's actually going on. So I think the key is building trust so that they can tell you what they need. And for CASAs particularly, you know, who are special advocate doesn't even begin to talk about the role that I've seen them play, right? You know, find out where the resources are. Ask Lori, she knows all of this stuff, or Rosa. There are people at CASA who can help you, but it's about building up enough trust so that parents can feel comfortable letting you in on what they need, and feel that it's not going to result in your thinking that they're terrible parents. Actually, a parent who recognizes what she or he needs is a parent who's moving in the right direction. And if they're reaching out, let's find a way to help them and remove that word resistance and recognize where that might come from.
Building on that, I'd like to just say one thing we try to train is, what are the strengths versus let's build on the strengths that already exist instead of identifying where all the deficits might be. And that's a really strong place to build from. Does anybody else want to add? I know we're going to start wrapping up in a minute.
I was just going to say, you can always refer them to the Parents in Partnership program as well to help in any way that we possibly can.
Absolutely do that. One other question came up, and I will just throw it out for whoever would like to answer, and let me pull it up. If a parent's in jail, what are their rights as a parent? Can they have Zoom visits or mandated phone calls if their child is in the system?
So that's a big problem. We have just in the last, I don't know, about a month ago, finally got a system set up so that their lawyers could actually talk to our clients. That the Sheriff's Department worked very, very hard and put together a system where we can now talk to our clients pretty much anytime we need to. But as far as visits, they don't have the technology. They don't have the orders aren't being made. You know, if we're lucky enough to have a family member or Pastor John, you know, if somebody from the church, you know, could take a grandparent or a foster care foster parent over to the jail at the county jail, and if they could walk them in to have a visit, you know, that's not going to happen either. You know, we could, as I was processing that through, I'm like, no, that's not going to work. It's not a good time to be in jail. I'm not going to lie.
Well, one thing that I would throw out is maybe at least taking photos of the children, of the little ones, and sharing those photos and taking them monthly, because we all know little ones change dramatically every month. And maybe putting a little story of what they're doing in that letter with that picture, that they're now reaching, or they're now sitting up or rolling over, or sharing just in that developmental process might be a start to that, even though we can't have visits in person.
I just want to add, the system itself, when it comes to mothers and fathers for incarcerated parents, is very drastically different. Mothers have a lot of programs, visitation, all that. Fathers do not at all. And really, social workers don't even like to take the kids to the male jails, period. And so that was one of the things that we heard a lot. But I can tell you, going into the jails where fathers hadn't heard anything about their children and I don't know how long, and us participating and saying, hey, you know, he's working with our program, he's doing this. And we would go after they had received pictures, guys and men tattooed all over for whatever reason they were in there for, crying, showing us how beautiful their children were and how impactful, like there was something waiting for them at the end of the tunnel and how important that is. And so even if a phone call can't happen, we are telling fathers, hey, make sure, we're telling parents, men and women in the jails, make sure you're writing your kids, even if they can't, draw them pictures, whatever you can. But they need something reciprocated back if they're not able to see them physically. And I can tell you from personal experience, going in and talking to them and seeing the joy of just getting a picture, even if it's a month and a half old, is it absolutely, it tells me that I'm in the right line of work. But it's so important to have those workers who do it, whoever it is, do it, send those pictures. You know, it's so important for them to see that. I personally, and I'm going to share a little, I didn't visit my kids for 8 months when I had my open case. I was stuck in an alley someplace, homeless. And my son, who was 2 at the time, when I finally went to go visit, he had no idea who I was. He screamed and cried, wanted nothing to do with me. And it broke my heart. And so, and that was my choice. I chose to be out there, but it's so important for kids to know and to remember and to see, but also for parents too. Like we need that too. It's so important to see that. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And now we need to wrap up, but I do know Dennis has a small message that he wanted to share about apologizing, I believe, that he
So
thought would be really helpful.
it's just something that seems to, people come to me and want to hear about it. It's just, when I did insurance defense before I became a parents attorney, I was shocked by the number of car accidents where people would be suing each other, where somebody would have their deposition taken and they'd say, you know, I never would have filed a lawsuit, I never would have gone to see a lawyer if they had just said they were sorry. And ever since then, I've been kind of a student of the apology, and it can solve so many problems in the work that we do. Sometimes, most often, it's a child who is just done with their parent. They're just so angry that their parent hasn't done what they needed to do to get them back, or they're so angry about being in the system at all. And you know, the parent comes to court and they want to blame the foster parent, they want to blame the social worker, they want to blame the system for turning their child against them. And what we try to do is explain an apology done properly in a 3-part manner can really do wonders. And this is only if your goal of the apology is to heal a relationship. And the first step is you have to apologize for what the other person thinks you did. One time I had to apologize to a CASA because I had yelled at her. I did not think I had yelled at her. I thought I had, you know, was using my, you see, I have a loud voice. I'm very excitable. But she said I yelled at her. So damn it, when I did the apology, I had to apologize for yelling at her. And then I told her the second part of the apology needs to be what you're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. So, you know, I'm gonna, you know, read a book about communication. I'm going to talk about this to my therapist. I'm going to talk about this to someone else to explain, you know, why am I getting so frustrated at court that I would yell at a CASA? You've got to lay out a plan for how it's not going to happen again. And number 3, you have to listen to how your behavior made the other person feel. And that's the magic part. That's where you tell them, listen, you know, I screwed up. You shouldn't have to carry that around on your shoulders. I should be carrying it around on my shoulders because I'm the one who screwed up. So please tell me how I made you feel. Tell me, you know, what effect this had on your life. And then you listen to them. No ifs, ands, or buts, no explanations. With parent and child, I always tell them the only 3 things you're allowed to say are, I'm sorry, I love you, or you nod your head. And if you can do all three parts of that apology, sometimes the person isn't ready to talk to you, and you've got to remember that's on their time schedule, not yours. But I've just seen amazing, amazing results. Sometimes I have encouraged a parent to apologize to a social worker. Sometimes I've even been known to suggest to a social worker they might want to apologize to a parent. So that's just a little tip that I think if we can go through life just being cognizant of, the good manners things that our parents all taught us when we were in kindergarten, and one of them being, if you did something wrong, apologize. Thanks.
I want to agree with you, Dennis. I knocked myself off the pedestal when my kids were little. I figured the fall was a lot smaller, a lot lower when they were 3, 4, and 5, that a parent can make a mistake. An adult can make a mistake.
Yeah.
And if we work to repair those relationships, then we're working on that one side of the equation, which is necessary to help our young children to develop and thrive if we're strengthening the parents and we're teaching them and working with them and supporting them in improving their relationship with young children. So I want to thank all my panelists for an absolutely incredible session today. I was moved and motivated and inspired by all of you. And I know I was a little crazy in scheduling all the meetings and how long things were going, but I really wanted to make sure we had time for everybody to hear your wisdom and your information today. I want to let all the attendees know that we'll be sending out a recording of today's session, probably by Monday if Zoom has done all of its thing behind the scenes. Next week, we will be opening the broadcast of the webinar at 11:55, like today, and then have 10 minutes for folks to come in. And next week, the discussion will be on social emotional health of young children, services and supports, and then we'll be hopefully tying it all up together. But just want to thank all of you. I see lots of wonderful thanks and appreciation in the chat box if you're not seeing it, for your wonderful involvement. And I think I'm going to see all of you at some meeting or some session in the next month or so. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to all the attendees for sharing your time again with us on this important subject. Bye. And panelists, if you want to stay on and see all the thank yous, you can.
I've actually got to see a dad in a few minutes, but I wanted to thank all of you. You guys are just amazing, and I'm so moved and felt so grateful to be on the panel with you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I might see you at the fellowship, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if you're my facilitator or not.
I do. I know.
Are you going to tell me?
Not yet. No, I can't.
Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Amber.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Bye. Hello.
Thank you, Lori. That was amazing.
Yeah.
It worked out so well. You're becoming quite the pro at this.
Well, I had to do this little sign because I know it was either going to be Dennis or Pastor Jefferson. I was going to have to.
But I thought it was just really, I mean, they kind of had their answers. It was great. It was really good.
Okay, I'm adding, Wendy wants to become a panelist again. Let's see if I can do this. Let me find her. I'm working on it, Wendy. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can look at when doing this, and then trying to do my phone with the clock. Wendy, I think you're on.
I don't see her still. Yeah, right there. Yeah, she's there now.
Oh, she is?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh my God, that was amazing. Great job, Lori.
thank
Really
you.
good.
They did
you-
wonderful.
They're awesome, but I mean, do you feel good about it? It was.
Oh,
I thought it was
absolutely.
great.
There's always the nerve that
Amber
don't-
is so cool.
she is. I think we should have something for CASA, specifically not around early childhood, but just hearing PIPs and collaborating with parents. And
Yeah. How many people were on today?
it looked like about 135 were on. I mean,
That's so great.
250 quote register, but I've discovered like some people have registration issues, so they'll be on there 3 times.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, I was just thinking about, reporting back to Atlas and Deutsch about the convening and just how, I mean, we have so much great stuff to report. This is amazing. It makes me feel proud to be part of CASA.
Well, thank you. Jackie is supposed to be on there. I can check and see if she
Great.
attended, but she
Yeah,
registered.
I was going to reach out to her this week anyway about something else. So I'll ask her if she joined and make sure she's on next Friday.
Yes, it'll be another
Cool.
really good group, a very diverse group as well, including the CASA. We have a
Yeah.
CASA on the panel. But it's
Awesome.
going to be a great group, and they today they're wonderful.
Yeah. Well, they also seem to have rapport with each other, which is nice. So I love Dennis. He's a great guy.
He is. He's calmed down a little bit over the years.
Yeah.
And then Michelle
Good.
works directly with Pastor John. So she's
Mhm.
part of the training that the cultural brokers
Yeah,
get.
I met both of them at ERDB.
Mhm.
I'm in Arizona and I can't breathe. I'm
Oh,
allergic to the whole
no.
state.
Were you allergic when you had allergies when you were a kid?
I have been allergic. I'm allergic to like dander and stuff in the air that just keeps me from breathing right. So it's funny. I've been joking with people that I don't have COVID unless I've had COVID since 1985. Well, I'm going to get those thank you cards done in the mail to you. So that was awesome. I just wanted to say congratulations. Hi, Rosa. Nice to see
Hi.
you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing the cards. I appreciate it.
Sure. So I have a thing on my calendar next week, I think on Wednesday, that's like a convening check-in.
That is actually, we're doing the go-to webinar with CalCASA from the CASA webinar.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. I don't think I need to be on that. Okay. Yeah.
You can if you want.
No, thank you. Maybe I'll like come on at the end or something, but yeah, good luck with that.
You can tell Atlas we're doing that as well.
Right. Well, they wanted us to do that, to share it with other CASAs. So yeah, cool. All right. Have a great weekend.
Happy
Bye.
hiking.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's great. So you're on a roll. You're doing Wednesday and then Friday, isn't it?
Yeah, Wednesday they're taking the webinar that the 3 of us did with Cameron. It's not going to go the way we want it to go because they don't have litmus. But Lynn is going to run it through on GoToWebinar.
Right.
And then for the knowledge checks, we'll stop the webinar and I'll say, why don't you click this answer or this answer? And I'm not going to do all right answers because we want to show them what happens if you get a wrong one.
Yeah.
So we're doing that on Wednesday.
That's
and
good.
Then the convening is on Friday.
That's great. That is so good. Did you even have a chance to celebrate your birthday yesterday, or?
I had some friends. One friend, there's this coffee cake breakfast place that I used to go to all the time in college. So she shipped me a whole sheet of coffee cake.
Wow.
I didn't know it was coming. And she's like, there's a package for you. Like, what did you do? And then we did a Zoom call at about 5:30, like the group of us.
Oh, that's good. So you got a piece of cake for each one of them.
I did. I had a cake for dinner last night. I did the coffee cake with scrambled eggs. I did breakfast for dinner. Because guess what? It's my birthday. I can do what I want.
That's good.
So that's what I did. I'm going to Paso Robles
in 3 weeks. That's my
Oh, that's
celebration,
great.
just to
That's
get
good.
away.
I went to San Luis Obispo this past weekend.
Oh,
It
you
was-
did?
Yeah, it was just great. Just with 2 friends, and